Hey, what's up, everyone, and welcome to another episode of We Need to Talk. Today, joining me for a one-on-one interview, we have Bosco and KO of the drama comedy poetry duo Griot. Look at all those O's rhyming. I love it.
Look, come on now. Thank you for having us.
Of course. And you
Thanks
guys
for
are
having
both
us.
absolutely. You guys are both based in Los Angeles. We're getting some crazy weather this weekend.
I know it seems to be going up and down, but I'm happy for the sunshine.
Yes, amen for that. So let's talk a little bit about you guys. So Griot, I was looking up the definition of Griot, and I love it. I think it's beautiful. But why don't you tell the listeners what Griot means and how you guys came up with that name for your duo?
Okay, so basically a few years ago, I was out of town with my uncle who's a professor, and we were kind of having a conversation about our family lineage and where we come from and things of that nature. And at one point during the conversation, he literally mentioned the word griot, and I asked him what that was. And he explained to me how a griot in West Africa was the person that kind of kept the history of the village. They were also storytellers, poets, performers, musicians, a number of things. But the biggest thing that was important to me was that they kept the history and they passed that along. It was a verbal history passage. So after hearing that explanation from my uncle, I came back to Cole. And beforehand, we called ourselves Prose Poetry, she being the poetry and me being the prose. And I was like, yo, we had really talked about kind of revamping who we were and really trying to hit this whole poetry, spoken word game real hard. And I was like, this would be the perfect name for us. And I explained to her what it was, and she was on board from that point.
I think it's absolutely beautiful. I really, really like that.
Thank you.
So when did you guys come together? How long have you guys been a duo?
I'll let you tell that part, Miss Cole.
Well, it's been about, like 7 years.
Yeah.
It's been about 7 years that we've known each other for over, 15 years now?
Yeah, since we were like
I would say,
18 years old.
So we've known each other for a while, but we never collaborated in this way creatively until 2013 when I moved to LA.
Okay.
And he was already like doing acting, and he was writing for this specific project. I remember it because it was such a different take on covering a woman going through an abortion. I won't put itself out. Well, is it out there? Can I talk about it?
I mean, it's not like publicly, but you can talk about it. I mean, it's fine. Like, I've copywritten my shit, so it's okay.
It's in our live show. It's in our live show, and we actually showed it at our live show. Basically, it's a take on like the guy's perspective of his woman having an abortion, but he wants to keep it.
Okay.
But she doesn't. And so that was such a unique take. So I was helping him write that, or like kind of edit it. He already had it written. And from that point, we started kind of writing together just on random topics. We would meet at Republic of Pie all the time.
Holla.
Exactly, in that back room. Get that free Wi-Fi.
Right. Free Wi-Fi. You know how it is. The struggle is real.
I love it.
Free Wi-Fi. You're there all day. Coffee, pie is great.
Yeah,
so we used to meet there a lot. And in the beginning, we met quite often because we were both like in that space where we could do that. Now, I mean, it's kind of like, especially in these times, we write separate and then we come together and kind of put it all together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we've been writing together for the last 7 years.
So why spoken word? Why poetry? Why did you guys choose that medium to be your creative outlet? Because it isn't as common, and every time I hear, I'm like, oh, I forget that this is so good, and not a lot of people just don't do it. At least I'm not exposed to that world so much, and it's not really a mainstream art form, unfortunately. So why did you guys choose to do spoken word and poetry?
I got involved with it largely because of Cole. I mean, she has been writing poetry for years, longer than her and I have been writing together. And when we were having those initial conversations where I was working and writing my project, she was just like, well, why don't you write poetry? And I was like, I don't know if I necessarily do that. Like, I write stories. Like, I can write a story. It could be a short story, but I don't know if poetry is necessarily my thing. But I will say, like, I had been involved in like performance art in like high school. I used to do forensics and speaking events and things of that nature. So when I thought about it, I was like, well, you've kind of done this before. Poetry is something that you didn't necessarily specifically compete in, but it was a category. Mm-hmm. So after her and I writing together, she would write her poetry and I would just write what I call prose. And then we just kind of, as she said, we melded it all together and it kind of flowed really, really well. Mm-hmm. And then from her iron sharpens iron. So because she was so awesome, it was just like, well, I got to be awesome too. So let me write some good poetry on
Yeah.
this end. I mean, for real, like you ain't gonna stand
Don't
next to somebody great
don't
and not like try to up your
Of
game.
course, of course, of course.
So like
right.
that's
He
kind of where it
also
came
was
from.
very good. And he was good on the performance aspect because, like I said, he had already been doing
Just
acting,
acting, yeah.
had already,
Yeah.
yeah, he was already in that world. He knew what it was like to be in front of the camera. So like, the funny thing about us is like, when it came to the live performance, that was kind of my comfort zone. And like, he liked being on stage for sure, but it was always like, and so that was like my comfort zone. But when it came to us being on camera, I was the one that was like,
Yeah.
We
and
both
he had
freak
to
out in
coach.
different instances.
Right,
Yeah,
right. You
it's
have
a
you both have your strengths and
very
your
different
weaknesses
world.
and your comfort levels, which is
Right.
cool. So it's a good balance, I can tell.
It
That's
definitely is.
wonderful. So when it comes to
Yeah.
content, how do you guys figure out what you want to write about? Are there specific themes that for your duo as a whole, that you like to focus on, or is kind of everything an opportunity for you, and anything you can write about anything?
Cole?
Okay, I was like, you want me to talk?
You got it.
I think what's really dope about our particular duo is that we're also friends. So it's not like we met in a performance way. We just do life together. And so being able to come from that perspective, we just talk about life, whatever's going on with us. Like the very first poem we wrote it because we were both, I think we were like 26, 27, around that age. And we were like, dang, we almost 30, and we were looking at our lives and it was like, yo, my life is not adding up to what I thought it would be at 30, and so we started writing about like we started writing about what life was for us at the time and what we thought it would be, how we matched up and how we weren't matching up. And so that was our first piece. And then our second piece came from, he had just came off of a breakup, but guys, they don't really talk about it, But he had just came off a breakup, and I had just had like that heartbreaking crush, I can't get up off the floor breakup.
Yeah.
And me and him and I were supposed to get together and write that night, and I didn't want to, but I was like, you know what? You told this man he's gonna write, like just go over there. And normally you don't break down with your guy friends. It's normally your girlfriends that you're like, and that man asked me one question. I think he was just like, so, how you doing? You want to write about? And I'm just like,
you lost it.
Yeah.
Sometimes it just takes one question. He probably could have asked you what you wanted to eat, and you probably still would have broken down.
It was definitely one of those kind of nights. It didn't matter what it was.
I'm telling you, like, it was on me, and him being in that creative mode, he was just like, okay, tell me more. Okay, tell me more about what you're feeling. Okay, what about this? Okay, well, how would you word this? And at first it was annoying because I'm like, bruh, I'm trying to pour my heart out to you. You want me to write a poem right now? Yeah. But, we worked through it. And ever since then, seeing how successful that poem was for us, because Crushed is one of our, I would say, most successful pieces.
I would definitely say that,
yeah. Every time we perform it, people are like, yo, me too, And so from that moment, we learned like the best way for us to come up with content isn't like because we tried the whole, let's storyboard, let's put up some, topics and see what happens. And it's never as good. Like it's good, but it's never like that hit you in the face good,
Yeah.
And so we've just learned to just live some life and then come together after a couple months and be like, all right, what you been going through? What have I been going through? Let's find the similar themes.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the beautiful things about art, that everybody kind of has their own path of how they accomplish what they want to get done. For me, I'm very much in the same way that you guys are. I'll just sit down at a piano and start writing a song, or I'll just start singing a melody. But I know other people are like, okay, this is the theme that I want to write about. I want this to say this in the verse, say this in the chorus, and I just can't wrap my mind around that. But then they'll come up with a masterpiece writing like that. So I love that you guys have kind of found a structure that works for you guys, even though it's kind of structureless, if that makes sense.
No, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah,
That's
true.
Yeah. So
we have a formula. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that that's a beautiful thing. So let's talk about your live shows that you guys have done. Just tell some of my listeners, like, what is a live Griot experience like?
I would have to say It's probably me stressing out at first, and then Coach. No. It's a good time. I mean, Cole and I are best friends. This is literally like my sister. So I think that we convey that from the stage. Like, it's a familial environment. Like,
Yeah.
when you come to see us perform, you're just going to have a good time because we are having a good time. I genuinely enjoy being on that stage with her. And when we have those moments when we mess up, where her and I know we messed up, we laugh it off, and then the crowd will laugh, but y'all don't know what we just fucked up.
Yeah, right.
All right.
But I'm just saying, in general, it's because we take our art serious. It of course is a serious moment for us, but at the same time, it's also very lighthearted.
Yeah.
Because we convey truth and honesty, but within that truth and honesty, you're also going to have really jovial moments. You'll have those moments where you'll chuckle, where, you know what I'm saying, you might hopefully like shed a tear or two, where you'll actually be touched. But overall, when you come to see us, just know that you're going to have a good time seeing two good friends express themselves in the format in which they love. And hopefully you'll be able to relate to all of the things that we talk about, because I think that's the biggest thing to us, is that whatever we put out, we want it to be universally appealing. Because I think oftentimes when people go through things, they don't necessarily believe that other people have gone through those same issues and feelings and sentiments that they had prior to experiencing those things for themselves.
Absolutely.
But one of the things that I most appreciate about like doing live shows is that you get that immediate response from the audience. You can hear them ooh and ah and cry and laugh, and all of that just invigorates your own performance itself. So when you come to see us, just know that we're going to put on a show for you. We're going to make you laugh. We're going to make you cry. But at the same time, and most importantly, we're going to make you think, and hopefully think differently prior to when you walked into the door.
So I want to follow up on something that you said, because I think that goes to, it kind of is how a lot of Black artists feel in general, is that if you haven't experienced what we've experienced, you can't necessarily relate to it. And do you find that to be, I mean, do you agree? Do you find that to be common with a lot of Black artists? Because I feel like, let's say, if you're trying to expand to be more mainstream, you do have to reach white people. Let's just be honest, right? They can't necessarily relate with a Black person, but it's like, we're all human. We all go through love. Yeah, because we're Black.
Right.
Like, but we go through love. We all go through heartbreak. We go through all these different circumstances. And I've noticed that, at least in my experience, that we automatically kind of get written off because they think it's just going to be specifically for the Black audience. And have you guys run into that at all with your art?
I think it's definitely an element. Especially even when you just say you are spoken word. That's already like, oh, that's Black. That's not
right.
Black. You know what I mean?
Like, right.
Definitely
so
true.
a lot of times we do have to reword it and say we are performance poetry, or we are, like a comedy drama duo.
Yeah.
Because all of that is within the spoken word part of it. But I think what we try very hard to hit you with the entertainment. You know what I mean? And I think what it does for us, not just for us, but for a lot of Black artists, you have to learn to be exceptional at storytelling. Not just like, you don't have the privilege.
You can't be mediocre.
Telling a story. Yeah.
We never can be.
Yeah, at all.
Twice as good to go half as far.
Yep. Amen.
Yeah. And you don't have the privilege of just telling your story. You have to learn how to make your story compelling. And like you said, they have to reach past your skin and be like, oh, I did actually have my heart crushed too. You know what I mean? Or I do actually think about, I set a goal for a certain age and I'm not there. You know what I mean? I think they hear us second and they see us first. So you just kind of have to edutain. That's what we call it. You have to entertain them first and educate them second,
And unfortunately, I do think that spans across many art forms. Like, you look at TV and film, and most Black centric things that are just have full Black casts, even though the themes and the script and the plots are completely universal, they'll do less well at the box office because people are going to assume, oh, it's a race-based film or it's a Black film, whatever that means. And it's so unfortunate that we kind of, like you said, we have to work twice as hard to go half as far, because people just don't think that they can relate to us, even though Black Panther proved that that's not the case.
Exactly.
Right.
That's precisely what it did.
Yeah. So I love what you guys are doing.
And so many others too. It
Absolutely.
sucks that so many other movies that are really, really dope don't cut through because of that. You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
yeah. It's
Yeah.
it's it's unfortunate, but and I don't know if we'll see that change in our lifetime, but I hope that it does happen because people are missing out
Yeah.
because we're dope.
I'm
Look,
telling you.
magical, magical,
Magical.
magical.
But they know that. They know that because that
Her
is what,
voice got so
listen,
high.
here's I'm sorry because
It really did. I was like, wait, hold up.
that's how you know you're just so passionate. Because I remember I took a class in college called History of Rock and Roll. Now I didn't know much about rock and roll as a genre before that class. You see how from way back when they had Black people writing the music, performing even the
Yeah.
music.
Yeah.
And then they would literally find a group of white kids to mimic that Black group, put them out, and then they soared.
Skyrocket.
You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
it
absolutely.
hasn't changed. That formula hasn't changed. They are still doing that today. You see it more in the performance art world than you can in like sports and stuff because you can't
Right.
make somebody athletic.
Yeah.
But like
Right.
they really try to like
Mhm.
make people, hey, even in England, Adele talked about this. Emily Sandé, who's also from London, talked about
Mhm.
this. Labyrinth, who's also from London, talked about this. They're all singers. Talked about how a part of their curriculum is studying soul music from America.
Mhm.
And so it's like, now if these people can't even graduate without studying Black music, come on.
Well, they have an award show actually, and it called like the Mobos, like the music of like Black people or something like that in the UK or whatever. It's an actual award
I
ceremony
did
that's
not know about
named.
that.
I
Yeah,
wouldn't be surprised because, well, first of all, I do think that the UK pumps out more quality than the United States often does. I think United States is more about
Absolutely.
quantity. But a
Yeah.
lot of the artists that you see coming out of the UK, you listen to their tone of voice, and I've had to question, like, wait a minute, are wait a
Are
minute,
you?
you know what I mean? Like you hear the influence in their music, you hear the influence in their voice. I mean, like you said, Adele,
Yeah.
Sam Smith, Jessie J, Duffy. You like hear
Yeah.
all these
Yeah.
white artists that are so heavily Joss Stone. They're so heavily influenced by Black artists. It's
yeah.
very apparent
Right.
in what they do. But Black people, for some reason, are not marketable in the eyes of the music industry in that sense. So why not put a Black
Right.
sound with in a white body and then sell that? You see it happen all the time, and it
And
really
it's
is
been happening
unfortunate.
for forever.
For
All of the
forever, it's
time.
like
Oh wait,
the
and
level of
it's
appropriation is crazy.
exactly. And I'm sorry, just to correct myself, it's called they are called the Mobo Awards, but it's the music of Black origin. That's an award ceremony in the UK that they hold every year. So it's
Oh.
just like they clearly
Mm.
recognize the beauty in
Origin,
our
hello.
artistry. Yeah,
It's where it started, so they
This
know.
exactly.
is where it started. Yeah.
They clearly
No.
recognize.
So let's look at
Yeah.
kind of what's currently happening in our country today. I feel we're kind of in the midst of like what feels like the second civil rights movement.
Mm.
And
Absolutely.
Black Lives Matter started back in 2016, that whole movement. And whether people are pro the organization or not, that's a whole nother conversation. The movement itself and that statement is true and always will be. So
Right.
how has that movement affected your guys' art and what you create in the music and the poetry that you put out? And are you trying to tap into those messages and be a part of that movement in what you create?
I
I
think it's kind of difficult. It's kind of difficult, right? Because it's like you always, as a Black person, whether you are, no matter what your job is, no matter what your career is, you always feel like an ambassador.
Yes.
So
so
there's
true.
never a time
Mm.
where you cannot think about
That just stressed
presentation.
you out. I
You
can
know
look
what
at
I
your face
mean?
and tell.
It did because when she said that, it's like I feel like for all my friends that are like trying to do better and want to understand, like I'm the only Black person in their life, I automatically become the spokesperson for all
Yeah.
Black people in their life.
Yes.
All
And it's
Black people.
exhausting. Like I'm about to like send them
Yeah.
my Venmo before I have a conversation with you. You need
Right.
to pay me for my
Literally.
services because it's
Right.
exhausting. So when you said
Yeah.
It
ambassador,
is.
I just felt that on my back because it's true.
Yeah.
It's so true. We
Yeah.
do become ambassadors and spokesperson, and we can get into like the other types of Black people like Candace Owens and Ben Carson that become the spokesperson for them as
Right.
well. But I
Right.
know. That's why I said we could, but I'm not going to. When you're one of the only Black people in people's lives, you automatically do become that spokesperson, and
Yeah.
it is exhausting.
Right.
I
Either
didn't mean to cut you
if
off,
you're
but
the
I felt it.
only, no, it makes sense. If you're the only, or if you're the good Black person in their life.
Yes, that makes them comfortable.
And and I've realized that I've been that for a lot of people unknowingly. But then when you recognize it, because like, we can see us in all of our flavors and have no bias or have no prejudice against them because we just know what it is to live life. It's not about them being Black. Any poor person carries themselves very similar. You know what I mean? It's just not the rundown Black neighborhood. You go into a rundown white neighborhood and you won't see some of the same stuff that you saw in the Black neighborhood, except ours might be a little more creative just because that's us on a normal.
We know how to make do with what we got.
Right. We might not have nets on our goals, but they're going to put like the crate from the milk up there so it still goes through something. Like it's just our mindset from slavery, really, to take what we've been given and make it better. And I feel like you do a disservice in your art if you don't speak to Black issues, because now you have a platform. So it's not so much about trying to be pro-Black as it is, this is just me. This is my life and my story, and I owe it to who I am as a human to speak on the issues that affect me and the people I know, because if you're not telling those stories, then who's telling them? So I think it's very important to tell the stories. But I also, then it gets to a point where you can't tell any other story. It's like, hey, we don't always have to talk about how hard it is to be Black. You can literally tell a story. Like, for instance, I think we have a piece where we talk about just like all the art that has influenced us.
Mm-hmm.
What we found is that a lot of that was Black. And it wasn't like, it was just like, these are really good shows, movies, books, people that have not just influenced Black people, they've influenced culture.
Yes.
And so I think the more we tell our story, the more we normalize Black people being culture and being like mainstream, I guess, is the best way to say that. So.
Right. Bosco?
No, I completely agree. I feel like when you have a moment like now, it is our responsibility to definitely speak to those issues. One of the things that there's a photo of like the people from like the Harlem Renaissance, or like Zora Neale Hurston and Langston Hughes. And I love that image of all of these different artists from all of these different fields, but all of their art contributes to the culture and moves us forward and helps us to progress. Right. So I look at Ko and I as the poetry aspect of that photo. Like, we speak the truth of our own experiences, plus the experiences of our forefathers, our grandparents, and ancestors that have come before us. And I think that it's really important that we speak honestly and earnestly, despite how ugly those truths may be, just because it's important that you all understand the truth of what actually happened. And I think that's one of the things that's most enlightening about this current second civil rights movement that we're currently going through. I think that, like, for example, a whole month ago with the whole people being finally enlightened to the whole Tulsa massacre. Like, people don't understand that is the only time in American culture that bombs were dropped on their own citizens, like American citizens.
Right. It's
and the
wild.
And the fact that is not taught in history books, the fact that all of these people were like, oh my God, I didn't know that happened. That was real. Like, that is absolutely blasphemous. That's blasphemous. Yeah. So it's just like, I feel like people are finally awakening to the fact that, like, the history that you have been taught is not the history in totality, I should say.
Right. It's history meant to protect, basically, whiteness and white supremacy in this country.
Yeah. And their fragility, like, it's just like, you need to 100%. Understand how horrible shit got. Like, it got bad. I'm sorry, I don't know if I can cuss on your
You can, you're fine, you're fine. No, absolutely. Okay, cool. Let it all out,
It's just
after
like,
you say it.
I know it. Well, first off, I did a couple times prior, and I was like, I should ask if this is allowed.
You're fine, fine.
My bad. But no, it's just infuriating, because we know the stories. Like, and the reasons why we know those stories is because our families told us those stories, but
Because
we
it's
didn't
our
learn these things.
history.
Yes.
Yes.
But the thing is, it's your history too. Just like
Mm-hmm.
I'm up here learning about George Washington, you need to know about Tulsa. You need to know about Rosewood. You need to know about North Carolina. Like, where they literally have completely not extinguished, but erased all of these occurrences just so you all don't see how bad you all, quite frankly, were. So,
And the funny thing is
And
that
are.
yes, yeah. she
what'd you
said,
say?
she said, and
Are.
are. She said, presently, currently,
Oh,
happening at the
Yeah,
moment.
not
But
were.
it
Are.
exactly. It's like they're erasing all the negative, but then when we want to erase the negative, then we're erasing their
yes.
history. So
Yes.
taking down
Right.
statues and
Look,
things like that, and wanting to add this, it's like, no, we're not erasing your history. We're telling you that you shouldn't be glorifying the part of history that affected us as a people and have kept us oppressed for so many years. That's all that those statues
That
are
exactly.
doing.
still
They
keep us
know
oppressed.
They know damn well they would not allow their child to go to a school named after a man that enslaved their forefathers. That would not
Exactly.
be allowed.
Exactly.
So on the inverse of that, why should we have to put our
Why
children through
should we
that?
have to?
Why are there statues put up? And
Right.
the fact that you all don't recognize that a lot of those statues were put up in the 1960s during the civil rights movement, just so they can continue to let you know, oh, we run this shit, not y'all. It
Yeah.
wasn't like they were put up during the
Right.
Confederate War, like during the
Right.
Civil War and shit, like things of that nature. It was after the fact to kind of let people know their place.
It's a scare
So
tactic.
exactly. So put it in a
Yeah.
museum. We know it happened, but I mean, the Nazi flag can't fly in Germany nowhere. It's against the law.
Right? And you don't think that you think they have statues of Hitler?
No.
Come on.
These people were
Right.
traitors to the United States of America. Like,
Right.
I understand your granddaddy fought in that war. And I understand that there were some black people that fought in that war too, but I'm sure I know they didn't want to, but they
Right.
were made to. But it's
Right.
just like, ain't nobody trying to glorify that. So
Right.
put it in a museum, let us
Right.
learn about it, but let's
Exactly.
actually move forward beyond that. And I think that's what a lot of the issue is. It's just like, we need to progress, and y'all still hold on to the past.
Yes, and that's so funny.
Right.
Seriously, I could go off on this for like hours, but
Go off.
we're not the ones
Do it.
holding on to the past. They're always telling us slavery happened this many years ago. Get over it.
Over it.
First of all, if we need to get over it, why do you need to keep a statue in a park? First question.
Right.
Second of all, why is there this mentality that if you address the negative, that means you're only focusing on the negative? No, it means we're actually trying to progress and move forward. But you guys do not want to even address the fact
Yeah.
that this even
Right.
happened. I mean, I don't know if you knew this, but there
Yeah.
was a high school in Texas that changed the wording from slaves to unpaid workers in one of their history books.
Exactly.
Unpaid workers,
Yeah.
but we are the
Are you
ones
serious?
100%.
No, I also believe it, and correct me if I'm wrong. From what I understand, also in Texas, in Huckleberry Finn, I mean, we've all read that book. You know how they use the word nigger in that book. I believe that they
Yeah.
removed that word from Huckleberry Finn in their in the books that they put out in Texas or whatnot.
They did.
So it's just like, what? Why are y'all trying to act like y'all didn't do? Like, if y'all want
Right.
us to move, in order to move forward, we need to acknowledge the
We have
past,
to address it.
Yeah.
give
Yeah.
us reparations, and then we can move forward.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's the thing. It's like we're not even asking you. What the girl said it so perfectly. I can't remember her name right now, but she's the one that went viral talking about the monopoly. Kimberly Jones.
Oh yes, yes.
Yeah.
The statement she said at the end of her video, y'all lucky Black people are only looking for equality and not revenge.
Not revenge.
Like, man, we are asking you for the basics. There's another comedian that covers that. I can't think, Michael Chi or Che.
We're just asking to matter. That's what he.
Right.
That's where
matters.
he said that's where the negotiation starts. Just matters.
Starts.
Just
matters.
matters, and you can't even agree on that.
Yeah.
Like, where do we go from matters? Like, exist? You know, like, I think what happens is you get the dichotomy. They see Black people thrive and they think to themselves, you're fine. You look at Michael Jordan, look at Obama, look at Oprah, look at, they'll name these people that and try to negate what's happening. Go ask all those people what they went through
to get to where they are.
Yeah, it's not that those people are there and they just got there like you did. Those people fought to get there. And like I had this actually happen recently at a job that I worked. for a hospital I worked for. It's a very prestigious place. And, you know, they were trying to tell me like, because we were having a conversation about racism, which I hate having in workplaces, but you know, when it happens, it happens.
It happens, yeah.
And, and, you know, they tried to come for me like, yo, you can't speak on this because look at you, like you work here, you have this and that. And at first, you know, you want to go off, but you know, you're trying to do the right thing by educating ignorance. And I was just like, they wouldn't even take me with my real name here. I applied there with my government name and no response. Changed that same resume. Didn't change anything on it but my name to my initials. And 2 weeks later, I got an interview.
Boom.
Same person, same resume, same cover letter.
So before we walk through the door, it's the issue.
Right. It's just the name change and that's it. So it's like, you know, that same those same qualities and qualifications came from the same human being, but the moment you thought that human was Black, you couldn't even see those qualifications, you know? And I think that speaks to everything we do. Like, even when sometimes you've proven yourself to be great, you still have to deal with that, you know? And it sucks because we have to be excellent and they just exist.
Yes.
Be mediocre.
And I think, no, exactly. They can just be mediocre and it's fine. But here's the thing that always bothers me. I always feel like Black people are in this kind of catch-22. We're always told like, oh, you need to work hard for what you want to get to where you want to. And then when we do work hard, we're giving the benefit only because of like affirmative action or, you know, it's like,
right.
We can't win for losing. We cannot, like, it doesn't matter what we do. You just don't think that we should be ahead in any way, shape, or form. That's how it feels.
Right.
Yeah.
Because we do the work, we work hard, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
They're protecting what they put in place. I you know, you hear people say all the time, the system is broken. And I always say it's not broken. It's stronger. That system is doing exactly what it was designed to do.
Because it wasn't designed for us.
Listen, and they've diversified this system. Like, it used to be you had to enslave somebody to treat them poorly. Now they have replicated slavery in so many other fields of work. It's just worded different, it's said different, and sometimes not. In music, master copy, slave copy. Like, there's, you know, like, there, you see it in so many things. And it's disheartening because the people who can make the changes don't. Yeah. And a lot of them are either blinded to it, and once they're educated, they hide. You know, and the ones that know about it, they know and they don't care. It works for them. That's all they want.
Right.
You know, and so you as a person of color, you have, that's when we go back to that being an ambassador. You don't have a choice.
Yeah.
Because as long as you are pushing and breaking through walls and ceilings and all of that, you got to make sure there's a trailblaze, or they're just going to cover up your footsteps and hope that the next person doesn't try, you know?
Right. So in the wake of this movement currently, we have seen, you know, like you said, Bosco, people are being enlightened finally and realizing that we weren't just talking to hear ourselves talk, but we've seen a lot of companies and a lot of people come forward with trying to make changes and add diversity to their rosters, or just in how their work practices are. And I've viewed it a lot as performative activism because I feel like people thought it was a trendy little thing to do. And they're not really moving forward with their words. Have you guys experienced anything like that?
I will say that not in this most recent scenario, as far as everything going on since, let's say, George Floyd and everything like that. But prior, as far as at an older job, there was another, I want to say, like, there was a shooting and whatnot. And I do recall, like, management and people, because people were down again about it, because a lot of the staff at the company that I worked at prior was a minority staff. And because I was in a leadership position at that particular job, they did come to us and talk to us about, like, you know, what can we do to kind of like uplift the spirits and things of that nature. And at the same time, like, you appreciate the inquiry as far as like, how can we help? But I think, especially when it comes into the business sense of the world, you have to be able to, or you should already be implementing those gears of change. There were so many other individuals at the company that I used to work at where there were qualified individuals that could have gone into management positions, but for whatever reason, they just did not. And don't understand how you can just automatically leap past other qualified persons when they have the true ability to do the job and do the job well that they
Right.
need to do to help the overall company excel. So I mean, I have certainly seen in the past, but I can't say like at least recently, because
Mhm.
I don't think I would have taken that well if you would have came, especially with everything that happened at the end of May with George Floyd, and then you had we finally really found out all of the logistics with Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery. It was just so much at one time
Mhm.
that wouldn't have been received well as far as where I currently, just because it doesn't seem genuine.
Well, because
Because
it feels like one of us has to die for
But
you to
for
actually
you
want to
to
do
pay
something.
attention,
Yeah.
yeah. And
Yeah.
we've been, and the
I
thing is that
mean,
other always bothers me is the fact that we have been hollering these things for hundreds of, like, we have been
Yeah.
saying these things exist,
It's
but
not to
until
hear ourselves talk.
yeah, until
Yeah.
you John Lewis walked across the Edmund Pettus Bridge and got his ass whooped. You know what I'm saying? Like, they didn't want to believe that we were getting our ass whooped without a camera there. Like,
Right.
our skulls were being cracked and we weren't doing anything violent.
Yeah.
We, you know what I mean? So it's just like it does seem very disingenuous to now. Okay, now your ears perk up when people are rioting and they break into a Louis Vuitton store and you see that they're coming out of their neighborhoods and coming into yours. Now you want to
Right.
act concerned. Now you
Yeah.
want to put up the board to say
yeah.
like BLM and all. Like, are you really for the cause, or are you really just trying to preserve your establishment and your business?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
every
But
aspect.
we know it's B.
Yeah, exactly. And I will say, like, one of the reasons I will say that's kind of inspiring, at least in my opinion, with this whole movement that's currently going on, is that I do appreciate the reach and the resilience of American Black culture. Like, we were brought here, and we were literally stripped of every aspect of our being, our
Mhm.
language, our religion, all of our heritage. We had to start anew here in the United States of
And
America.
probably our wealth too.
Exactly, all of those
Mhm.
For
things,
sure.
our familiar,
For
our
sure.
family structure, everything.
Yeah.
So, but within this past, since the 1600s or whatnot, we've created our own culture here,
Yeah.
and that culture is so massive, so important, that it's not just American culture, it's world culture.
Mhm.
So to see people in Pakistan and in New Zealand going on marches, to see people in parts of Italy and
Tokyo.
Spain talking about like Black Lives Matter, it just goes to show, like, damn, we did that shit. We were brought
Yeah.
here, everything was taken from us, but what do? We rebuilt, which is what we always do. And we rebuilt in such a way that we now have this coalition of not just us as Black folks being the 13% that we are here in America, but we have this world coalition that's just like, yo, we are rocking with y'all. We see what y'all been talking about, and we ain't going nowhere, because Black culture is world culture, where fashion, music, athletics, entertainment,
Yes.
scholastics, like all of those aspects, we conquer all of them and we push the culture forward. So I
And
mean, that's the
no,
only
I
beautiful
fully
thing
agree
I can
with
kind
you.
of pull from it.
100%. And I think that that's kind of one of the reasons why there is such a animosity towards Black culture and Black people, not Black culture, but Black people, is because despite everything that we've been through, we still rise and we still
Yay.
have joy.
Right.
Still
Yeah.
have smiles on our face. They're
Right.
like, dang, we enslaved you. We did Jim Crow. We had redlining. We had police brutality. Y'all still smiling? Like, yes.
Yes, mass
Right.
incarceration, we still here. What's
Mass
up?
Right.
incarceration, we still here.
Yeah, we're gonna
Yeah.
fight through
Right.
it, and it just makes me excited to see where we will be another 100 years from now,
Yeah.
because I look at how much progress we've made so far. And granted, it might seem slow and very incremental, but like, we are moving out here, and
We
it's
are.
not going, because the
Yeah.
impact is too vast. Like, again, we influence the world culture. And people understand and know that now. Like, they can't. The reason why the NBA is kowtowing to those players, the NFL is kowtowing to those players, because there are 80 and 90% of those leagues. If we don't want to play, y'all not making y'all's money. So get on board. If you're not,
It's
we're gonna go
true.
someplace else.
It's
So
true.
it's just like, we're
Right.
too much of a force in culture. We know that now. That was the thing that y'all didn't want us to know, is how powerful
It's
we
how
are.
powerful we are.
And now we see
Absolutely.
it.
Right.
So it's just like, either y'all get on board or we out, and we're gonna do this on our own, because people gonna
Yeah.
come where we go, because they
Mm-hmm.
always have come to
Right.
our home. They don't go to yours.
Amen.
Come on.
Yes.
But there is the slacktivism though. Like, you do see people speak it and they don't follow up. Like,
To use that phrase,
we may not
slacktivism. I love that.
slacktivism out
Slacktivism.
here.
That is
You
real,
know,
girl.
like I heard somebody say that and I was like, yo, that is such a great way to put it. Because it is. It's so lazy. It's like,
Yes.
oh, let me just put a Band-Aid on a bullet, wound. And it's like, I mean, I cannot say we have directly felt it, but I will speak to the fact that there have been places we have submitted ourselves to, because right now, us as a group, we're in the process of publishing a book, our first book.
Awesome.
And so we've been having meetings with different publishers, and we've been looking for those places that support kind of what we speak on already, and those places that say they're looking for diversity and all that. And we met with a particular one that said they would, diversity was something they were looking for. But when they had to clean their own house, they weren't willing to get rid of the things that would allow them to support diversity. And so for me, that's still the slacktivism. You put this on your mission statement, you put it on your website, you put it out to the world that you want to be a part of the people making diverse calls. And when it's time for you to do it, you got a million excuses as to why you can't.
The line was
and so, for me, it's you hear it and you can recognize it immediately. Like, okay, you just want to look like you're a part of the game.
Diversity still has limits for some people. Diversity still has a lot of limits for some people because they want to be comfortable. They want to be comfortable.
They don't want to have to deal with what it means to break away from some of their partnerships or some of their sponsorships, maybe, investors, founders that have these really terrible ideals about Black people. It's still a thing. And, you don't have to go that far back. We could go to one of our friends' grandmother, and that person would have a very bad outlook on who we are because of where they grew up, how they grew up, the times they grew up in. It's that much different. Whereas you go to the South in our generation, and it's different. Just even their parents, the parents of some of our friends that were raised in the South, it's like, I don't do these mixed racial relations. I don't do these interracial. I don't do interracial events. I don't do interracial entertainment. Because that is not how they were raised. You know what I mean? And so it's funny. It's not funny. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that you had a little girl. I can't remember the story, but there was this little girl in the South who went. She was the first Black girl to go to this school. Her mother walked her into the school, and they were and they were spitting. Grown people
on a little 5-year-old girl.
On a little girl because they didn't want her in their school. That wasn't that long ago. And so it's like just like 50, 60 years ago, y'all were spitting on girls that looked like me.
Yeah.
Just for wanting to be educated well.
Yeah.
And now you feel like you've reversed that because you got one little thing in place that might get me in if I have an exceptional, presentation. I can't just want it. I can't just say, hey, I got B's. I really want to come to Harvard or whatever elite school. I'm not going to put them out because it's not just them. But, I want to go to any Ivy League. It's not possible. I have to have a 4.3. I have to have this many hours of community service. I have to have saved the lives of veterans. It's like I have to do these crazy things.
And even then, you would only get
in. It's just amazing. Yeah.
Because of affirmative action.
Right.
It's
either
ridiculous.
That or I have to be so poor. Like I had to have gone, I had to be on food stamps, on welfare, living on the streets in foster homes from 20 different foster homes, child abuse, lived in my car. Why?
Why does that have to be my story?
Yeah. One of the things that I posed to a friend of mine the other day was, you have conversations about systemic racism and things like that. And I asked the question, I was like, so for those individuals that don't believe that America, currently has systemic racism, you have to admit that at one point in time in our country's history, that there was systemic racism because we couldn't do things. We know that Black people were enslaved. There were things put in line that we were not allowed to do.
Laws. There were laws.
Well, exactly. And that's my point.
Yeah.
So you can't deny the fact that systemic racism existed. So my question for the follow-up is always, well, when did it end? Tell me the law that was passed that ended it all. All of the things that were put in place to keep us down. What time, year, afternoon did this occur to where it was no longer existing? Right. And there is no answer for that because the shit don't exist.
Right.
You can't tell us that it doesn't exist. Now, granted, I can definitely say efforts are being made to dismantle it, but it still is not gone.
Right.
And you can't deny that. So whenever people have that argument that, there is no systemic racism, it's just like, ask them, when did it end?
Well,
Tell me when it ended.
no, and that's I love that because I get into this argument on Twitter often, and people always say, "Well, what are the laws that are in place that are specifically against Black people?" And they think that it has to have the words "Black" in
Black
the
people.
law for it to be against Black people. So, like for example, let's look at voter suppression, right? Yes, we all have the right to vote. But if you look at how they will close down voting polls, they will
Yes.
stop mail-in, absentee ballots, mail-in voting. You see that Trump's trying to do that. How do you, and it's predominantly affecting specific areas. Who lives in those specific areas? Like, how do we not put this together? Like the puzzle pieces are all there,
Right.
They just deny it. They just
Yeah.
deny it. And that's the most infuriating thing, especially today, because you can see it.
Yes.
40, 50, 60 years ago, it would be harder to see it. But now we are living in a world where it's real time everything. So you
Yes.
can see the redistricting of a map and how that would affect these low income folks over here on this side versus the people that have income on the other side.
Yeah.
Like the things that happened to Stacey Abrams in Georgia with the governorship, like that is blatantly apparent that was stolen from her.
100%.
It's blatantly apparent. So don't tell us that these things don't exist. And also, you don't be ignorant. Like at a point, your ignorance becomes stupidity because I have no more tolerance because it's laid out there in front of you. You're just choosing not to acknowledge it or see it.
And Google is free.
Yeah.
Yeah, for everybody.
Google is free
So
for
free.
everybody.
It's so free.
For everyone.
Or even for the people, like for me, and I've had some pretty tough conversations with non-Black people that I love dearly. Like we grew up together, or like, we've gotten to know each other professionally. And, for them, I have the patience because I know they mean well and they're just trying to figure out how they can actually change. But for people who literally are just like, it's kind of performative activism. It really is. It's not, you don't genuinely want to know, because like one of these girls I knew, like we're not like close like that. We just kind of know each other professionally. And she was like, well, what can I do? And I get it. But then at the same time, my answer was, please don't be offended by what I'm about to say. But if George Floyd was white, would you be asking me what you could do? Or would you just be doing things? She didn't respond.
I think she got offended.
She didn't respond. You know what I mean? Like, and it was just like, I don't need to tell you what to do. Do something. You just watched a man get murdered. And your next thought is, man, what could I do about this? And I think that kind of attitude is what bothers me so bad, is because the hearts of people are so hardened against Black people. Not just you watched a man get murdered and that didn't move you enough to be on these streets, to be on these phones, to be on these emails, doing work to change that. That didn't move you enough, or any time we've seen this isn't the first time. This one was just very bad. Like, you look at the John Lewis situation, and it took you seeing, I think they interviewed the white reporter who, he was actually like a young reporter at the time and was on that bridge. And he said, it broke the hearts of America so bad to see this. And that's what got changed. We had to break your heart. It's like, you know what I mean? You had to have your heart broken. You couldn't just get cheated on. You couldn't just get like, you know what I mean? Like, you had to get your heart
broken,
crushed. Before you were like, you know what? We need to change this. You know what I mean? And it's been happening for years. And you would think that George Floyd would have been that same crushing, but because people have lost their sympathy and empathy towards Black people, that didn't move nobody. I mean, it did us. We were destroyed. And there are other people who were like, oh man, that's really sad. But there was no call to action, because when you bring it back, George Floyd was somebody's brother, was somebody's father, was somebody's son. And if you are a parent or a sibling, you know what that feels like.
Yeah.
White people don't. They don't wake up in fear that their sons, their husband are going to go outside and die. Their daughters are going to get, inappropriately touched maybe when they get pulled over, or go to the hospital and not get properly taken care of because they're white, you know that your daughter, your wife, your mother is going to be fine.
It's not a part of their story.
Yeah, I just went through this with my own mom, where they ignored her pain until I went off. And then we got normal treatment. It wasn't exceptional. It was standard treatment. I had to go off for standard treatment.
She had to pull out that respiratory therapist jargon.
Yes,
like,
right.
They didn't know. Like, we got to tell the people what she does. She is a knowledgeable, well-informed respiratory therapist. She knows what she's talking about. So if her mama wouldn't be in Delaware, hell, she was just taking questions about my mama last night. I thought she had the COVID, so I called me because I was scared. I said, I got questions. So it's just like, no. She is too informed. Don't try and play her. But we shouldn't have to do that, is the point, though.
Exactly.
Right, that's the point. You shouldn't need to know what my background is. You should just treat me well.
Yeah.
And so I think that's kind of when people try to come at you about there is a systemic racism, it's like, of course you wouldn't see it because it doesn't happen to you. Ever. How would you know unless you do research, unless you actually be around people that don't look like you and don't talk like you and don't, you know what I mean? Like, if your circle isn't diverse, of course you'll never know the stories of the world and of your country, because you only know the stories of the people that are around you.
And you'll only see other races what's shown to you in the media. You'll only know them in one light.
Right.
I mean, we're always vilified there.
Right.
Absolutely. And it's a shame. I mean, you grow up in the South, you grow up in the Midwest, of course you're going to think all Black people are criminals, because that's all you ever see on the news is that they arrested another Black person, you know?
Right.
So it's unfortunate, but yes, I agree. You have to get around people that don't look like you. You need to broaden your worldview. Otherwise, I mean, also it's boring when it's not diverse, when you don't have people that are unlike you. Why do you want everybody around you to be the same? I don't get that. Right. Well, before we wrap up, why don't you tell the listeners what you guys are working on next? I know you guys said you're working on a book, so if you want to tell a little bit about that and tell us where we can also follow you and your work.
Come on, get us all to you, babe.
Okay. So I will say really quickly how to find us. We are on Instagram as _Griot. So you can find us there at _Griot. We have, just like a lot of our poetry and in our stories, we always kind of give you little visuals of our poems. We are working on a book right now. We finished the manuscript, which, man, you know, if you've ever tried to write a manuscript, you know the journey.
It's a lot of work. Yeah.
It is a lot of work. And so we are in the process of publishing that, and we'll have that ready for consumption by beginning of next year for sure. We also have our e-portfolio, which has some really cool stuff on there. It has our trailer for our live show, which we are trying to find a home for. And once we do, that'll be for public consumption as well. We have our short film, which is YouTube. You can go to YouTube and just type in Crushed Griot and it'll come up.
Which won an award, right?
On our YouTube feed.
It won an award, didn't it?
Yeah.
You did win the LA Music Video Award for that.
Congrats.
Yeah. Thank you. You know, we out here.
You out here. I love it. Well,
when the voice go high, you know she's passionate about it.
I love it. I don't think in the years that I've known you that I have heard that high voice. So this was actually fun to hear. I'm not gonna lie. All right. Well, you guys, thank you so much for being on the show and sharing your art and sharing what you do. I'm fans, obviously, and in any way I can support you guys, I'm more than happy to do so. So thank you again. And listeners, make sure you follow Griot, and we'll talk to you real soon. Bye.